Welcome to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am Dr. Christopher Holmes, host for this episode and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Today, I am joined by a magnificent, phenomenal, beautiful woman who's also, in my opinion, phenomenal in her own right because she is a Georgia peach right here in Georgia. Her name is Dr. Kimberly M Griffin. Who is she? Who is Dr. Griffin? She is a professional educator and she comes with over 17 years of experience and 9 years specifically in adult education. We're going to cover a whole lot of topics. Everybody knows education is my baby, it's my wheelhouse. So this is going to be a great time. Welcome, Dr. Griffin.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Dr. Holmes. I appreciate that wonderful introduction. And I am so happy to be here.
Well, listen, I don't tell lies. So that was just all the truth. I just, this is just who you are. So we're going to start and we're going to jump right in. Won't you go ahead and tell the viewers and the listeners a little bit about you and just tell them, where does it all begin?
Sure. Thank you. Well, it all began, I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and the daughter of a single mother. I have an older sister. So my mother raised my sister and myself in Baton Rouge. And, as most single mothers do, they work long hours. And my sister was really the caretaker of me. She's, some years older. And she made sure that, I did my homework, did all the things that a child should do when the mother is at work after hours. But then on the weekends, my sister would play school with us, with me and some of the neighborhood friends. And that's where my passion and my love of education came from. My sister, I look up to her and just thought she knew everything and still does. I still think she knows everything, but I don't like to tell her that, of course. But, I just, would admire the way she would just teach us and, just handled herself as an educator. And I carried that throughout my schooling. So, I went to a small Catholic school in my elementary days. And then when I got to junior high school, my mother decided that she would, actually my Catholic school no longer didn't have any grades after sixth grade. So I had to go to a different school. So my mother decided that instead of me going to the neighborhood school, which she was more aware of lack of resources and funding that, our schools and our neighborhoods have, she enrolled me in a program called the M&M program in Baton Rouge. And it was my minority to majority, which they took up students or kids in our area and bused them across town to other schools with better resources. So every day I would take a bus ride an hour and a half to this school. And when I arrived on the first day, all of us got off of the school bus and we were led to the trailers. This is where all of our classes were, all of the Black kids that got off of that bus, probably about 15 of us. There weren't many of us, but all of our classes were outside in the trailers. And that just kind of boggled my mind. Why is it that all of us are in classrooms outside of the school building? So, the beginning of the year, I'm doing my homework and my mom comes in and she's looking over my shoulder. She's like, well, didn't you do this same math or same reading assignments in 5th and 6th grade? Why are you doing the same work in 7th grade that you did a year or two ago? So after seeing this, work that I was doing, my mother made an appointment with the principal and sort of demanded, or as a mother would do, that they examine my test scores, my grades and everything. And, helped them to realize that the classes out in the trailers were called the C classes. So we were tracked A, B, and C. The A and B students were in the building and the C students were out. And they automatically assumed that all of the African-American kids that were being bused were the C students. So because I had a mother who advocated for me and her child, then I was the next day moved to the A school, the A classes. And when I moved into that classroom, the resources that were allotted those students were, it was just a major difference. They had state-of-the-art technology. They had, even back then, they had desks that flipped up and had headphones inside of the desk where you could listen to books on tape. And, it was just the major difference between the inside classroom and the outside classroom.
Wow.
So that opened my eyes then to you know, the differences between the haves and the have-nots.
Mm-hmm.
And it was unfortunate that everyone didn't have a parent or a mother or were aware what was happening to their kids that were going out to the C building. So there is where my love of education grew. When I moved into that building, I had my first African-American female teacher. She was a math teacher, Miss Lang. I remember her to this day. I can still see her standing at the chalkboard teaching, you know, those math facts and Roman numerals and, you know, which I still don't get, but I was just, you know, I was just in awe of this woman representing, you know, someone who looked like me, teaching me and these white kids. So I continued through, you know, junior high school, continued in that school. High school, I also went to a minority to majority school. And then I graduated and then I started my college at LSU. I went to LSU for a year. And within that year, I visited Atlanta. And I tell you what, that visit changed my life. That's when I got to see what was really happening outside of Baton Rouge. You know, Atlanta showed me people that looked like me, that were doing things, you know, there was Spelman, Morehouse, you know, the AU Center, you know, Black professionals, doctors, lawyers, just, you know, I was just in awe. And after that year at LSU, I made it a point to make my way to Atlanta. And I moved to Atlanta. Didn't start school right away. I was an office manager for it. So my first career was an office manager for a dental office while I was finishing up LSU. I was finishing up Georgia State. So I got my undergrad. Took me about 10 years to finish my undergrad because I would take a class here, take a class there, you know, live a little bit, you know, travel some, work, just, you know, trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grow up. Right. So got my undergrad in psychology and realized that an undergrad in psychology won't get you much unless you have a graduate degree in something. So, you know, I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I decided, why not school counseling? I wanted to go be in school counseling. So I decided to move to Chicago, get my graduate degree at DePaul. And while I was in the program, the school counseling program, I decided to substitute teach. And that was the end of it. That's where I fell in love with teaching. Yes, I had a strong mentor, Dr. Kathy Davis, who just kind of helped guide my way. As I was substitute teaching, I was in school getting my master's in early education and middle grades. And once I finished that, moved back to Atlanta, got a job in a middle school teaching sixth grade, love sixth graders, love middle schools. While I'm teaching, you know, loving the fact that students were loving to learn, and I had a part of that. But I also realized that I liked working with teachers, and I really enjoyed, you know, being a mentor or teacher leader. And my passion grew that I wanted to then teach teachers. So while I'm teaching middle school, I decided to go back and get my EDS degree. And then, you know, Piedmont University opened or started an EDD program. And I was one of the first to be in their first cohort and the first African-American to walk across their stage to earn my EDD degree. And that was in 2011. So here I am, you know, have my EDD degree and decided to resign from my full-time job as a middle grades teacher and just step out on faith and, you know, adjunct here and there. And then eventually Piedmont University offered me a full-time position, and that's where I am now. So I've been with Piedmont since 2014 and just loving life. You know, I get to teach teachers, which is what I've always wanted to do, and, you know, and help them and also have a connection with teaching students. So it's a win-win in my opinion.
Yeah, I really feel like that, you know, if we really want to make the biggest impact, because sometimes we can't touch every child, we can touch more teachers that touch children, we can make it.
Absolutely.
Now, listen, let's talk about this stint in middle school, because I taught high school and I have supported middle schools. Let me tell you, middle school is a different kind of beast. it's just the transition between being a child wanting to be an adult, the emotional breakdowns. It's just like,
Yes.
it's a whole lot going on in middle school.
I love it. I love it. So sixth grade is really my passion. They come in, just still loving life, loving their teacher, loving to learn, wanting to do their best. And I say they're great up until spring break. After spring break, you don't even recognize these kids. They're already seventh graders, and that's when you just have to count the days down to summer. But I've always just, that was what my substitute teaching was in when I did that in Evanston, Illinois. I substitute taught middle grades, and just felt, they're quirky, and I feel like I'm a little quirky as well. So I think you have to be a special being to really get it. And I'm just happy that I'm that special being.
Yeah, you do have to be a very special being. I will agree with you in that. Well, let's talk about, we could talk a whole lot about just instruction, but I kind of want to pivot in the work as you transition into working with adults. And I know you did a little bit of coaching. Mm-hmm. And for anybody that doesn't know what a coach is, it's somebody that's working with a teacher in the building, or maybe not necessarily working in that building, but you're working with teachers. You're coaching them through practices and strategies to be more effective, correct?
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because there are not always teachers that are embracing a coach. So what does it take for someone to work with an adult to help them improve their practice? Give me just a couple of things that really you need to have in your toolkit to make that an effective relationship.
I think the first thing, Dr. Holmes, is to make sure that you build a trusting, authentic relationship. You can't just go into a teacher's classroom and give advice, because adult learners are a little different than children learners. Adult learners come with their own knowledge and their own bag of tricks. And so you have to build those authentic relationships first, even if that means going in just, and they have to be authentic. You can't pretend that this is a relationship. You have to really build that relationship. So I think that's the first step. And then once you do that, you have to have those critical conversations. You sit down with the teacher and identify what you liked about the lesson, what area, and let them give you some feedback on what they thought was important, what they thought came out of the lesson, and then talk about ways that they think they could have improved on the lesson. And then you agree or disagree, and then also then you give your advice. So it's a give and take. You can't just go in and say, well, this is what I think, and this da 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 da. You have to hear them out. You have to let them give their ideas of what went right, what went wrong, and then you build off of that. And it takes taking baby steps for sure. Adults want to be validated. They want you to know that they know that, especially teachers. Teachers are, A-type personalities. They know what they know, and they don't appreciate you telling them what they don't know. So you have to be very careful. You have to walk that really fine line between, listening, communicating effectively, listening, and then also knowing when to say what it is that you need to say. So it's tough. It's the same with because I also teach in our graduate programs. So I teach teachers. So they come with their tool box of tricks, and all I'm doing is adding to that toolbox.
Yeah.
And they oftentimes appreciate it once they realize that we're on the same page here. I'm just trying to make you a better and more effective educator.
Yeah, and I know, I got my master's in adult ed, and I did that because I was teaching high school, and I had students that were really operating as adults in their normal life, and so I needed to understand their mentality to help them build a support, or maybe more of a value in what I was offering, right? And we know adults, if they don't find value in something, if they don't believe in it, they're not going to attach themselves to it and really go in all 10 toes down. And so I definitely understand what you're saying. But so many teachers, especially now, we're thinking about COVID, thinking about all the responsibilities that teachers have, they can be very guarded. and they're not always open to any type of feedback sometimes. And so I support you in echoing the idea of, one, the relationships are the most important thing. Because if they think that you're coming in to basically trash their teaching,
Exactly.
they're like, get out of here, don't come in here, I don't want to see you. And
That's right.
and that's another role too, because as a coach, you can't be running to the principal all the time. That is something that you and that teacher work on for a long period of time, until you simply say, the support you need is more than I can offer.
Right.
And then you turn that over.
And that was, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that's the thing. I think teachers had to realize that I'm a teacher as well. I'm on their side. I'm not an administrator. I'm here just to make them a more effective, better teacher. I'm not, and I think that's, if they think that you're coming from the administrative side, then I think that's where the guard is up. But I think when they realize that you're a teacher, as are they, and you're just trying to make them a better, more effective teacher and add to their toolbox. And I think that kind of helps them lower the guard a little bit. But, it takes, sometimes I would go into classrooms 3 and 4 and 5 times and not just walk through, just to, make my presence known, and not ever have that conversation or not have any formal notes to give, just because I didn't want them to feel like every time I come in, I'm, taking notes. Or I wanted them to know that I'm there just to, if they need me, if they want me to model a lesson, if they, have questions about something, I'm here. I would help sometimes answer students' questions when they were in small groups. I would walk around. So it just depends on what teachers need. And as we both agree, it's about building those relationships. And sometimes that can be difficult.
So then what you're doing is, like, you are developing the professionalism of that teacher. So you're really trying to see some growth. So you transition, and now you're working as a dean and as an associate professor, and you are continuing to grow adults because you develop and you implement professional development and training there.
Right.
So how do you establish first the need? And then we'll talk more about, and how do you drive the change?
So I established the need, especially as a manager of adjunct professors, because they're not full-time on our campus. Oftentimes, there are pieces that we know what's happening on campus that our adjunct professors don't. So a need can come from them just needing to know what's happening, the updates. So I established needs based on what's happening at our university that our professors need to know. So I develop professional developments that way. When I was in K-12, or even now, not as much now, but in K-12, I would survey teachers and ask them what is their need for professional development? What is it that they want to know more about? I remember when I was a K-12 teacher, no one ever asked me, well, not no one, but oftentimes they didn't ask what it is that we need to know. And every single year, for I kid you not, 6 years in a row, beginning of the year, our professional development was differentiated instruction. And it wasn't like it was differentiated instruction building on what we learned the last 2 or 3 times. It was always the same differentiated instruction, professional development. So, teachers begin to tune out. They begin to find reasons not to be at the professional. I have a parent-teacher conference, I can't come. They just find reasons, or just don't participate. And I want teachers, adults, to value the professional development for the trainings that we're giving them, and be able to, use it immediately when they go back into their classrooms or when they go back into their buildings. So I want to make it very, I want to make it applicable. I want them to need what I'm giving them. So that's basically it.
I love that. You said be asked. I had a conversation earlier, and one of the things that was said, that as a leader, one of the biggest skills that you have to learn is how to listen. And not always being the person to speak all the time.
That's
you have
right.
to listen to what people are saying. And so asking teachers, one, what is it that you want to help you grow professionally? And then you
Yeah.
ask two, where do you think your most undeveloped strength is? I don't want to call it a weakness, but where do
Mhm.
you want to grow, right? So you're establishing that professional development around what they're saying. And then of course, you're probably making observations based on some other things that this is a need. Now, what
Mhm.
you see sometimes may not be what they say, but your effort is to drive that change. So let's say there is a training or a need that they don't all agree with. How do you bring them on board to really shift or pivot in a way that's going to make the institution and make instruction for students better?
Well, sometimes you have to do trainings within trainings. So everyone may not necessarily need the I go with what most need, but everyone may not necessarily need what it is I'm developing. So then I can, have break off sessions where I'm developing one group in this area and then another group in another area. So everyone is getting their needs met. And then I do, at the end, I do tickets out the door, ask, what did they learn? Where could I have improved? What would you like to see in the next training? Just different things like that. So everyone feels like they have gotten something out of the training. They're able to verbalize what they've gotten or did not get and what they'd like to see in the next training. So just always communicating and making sure that they feel like their voices is a part of that training and then in the next training. Just always keeping them involved. Adults and teachers want to feel like they want to feel valued, like anyone does. So, and making sure that what they say, I'm actually doing it as opposed to just them giving me feedback and nothing ever happens with it. Always just keeping, implementing what it is that they need and then driving change that way.
Yeah, I love that. Making it a part, making it more of a collaborative effort. That is not what
Absolutely.
you're doing for them, but it's what you're doing with them. I think it makes a difference. So, in the same vein of providing training and development, you're bringing in a diverse group of adults that need support from you.
Mhm.
Now, we just talked earlier about this idea of diversity, right? So we're not just talking about maybe men and women or black and white. We're just talking about a very diverse population as it relates to cultures, identities, sex, a whole bunch of things that we weren't really talking about 10, 15 years
Mhm.
ago in
Right.
education, even with teachers. So as it relates to diversity and inclusion in education, what do you think are some of those positives that you're seeing and experiencing? And where is it that you see we still have room for growth?
I think the positive is that just the fact that we're talking about it, that we recognize that there are issues with um, truly being diverse, equitable, and inclusive, and really understanding what each of those terms mean. So we just at Piedmont University, we just started a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, and it's funny because I think people that volunteer for those things oftentimes really want to see change. And we work together. It's getting the others on board. I think that's where the challenge comes in, is getting others to open their minds and to see the need for having a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment. With diversity, equity, and inclusion, we open our world to so many opportunities, especially in education. When you include people that of different whatever races, sexes, whatever the diversity is, just think about the richness of the conversations or just the ideas that can be brought in. When K-12 started hiring non-traditional teachers that go through other avenues to get there. Yes, right. And me as well. People that have had a career prior to education, those folks brought in a completely different skill set and they were able to share that knowledge with the traditional teacher. I mean, that's what that diversity, equity, it just offers a more richer organization. And that spills over into our students, so I think that's the biggest thing, is just getting people on board, understanding the importance. It's easy to say that we have a DEI council. Are we just saying we have one to say we have it, to check off that box, or are we saying it because we really want to put these things into action to really make some changes, some positive changes on campus? So that was my sole purpose for being a part of that council, is because I don't want us to say we just have it. I want us to actually do some things. So one of my goals is to have a more diverse faculty and staff. In my School of Education, we currently have 3 people of color, all women. We've had one, I think she's been there maybe 25 years. I've been at Piedmont for 8 years, and then we just hired someone last year. And it was a struggle. We hired someone last year, and so she's been there 1 year. But School of Business, there are 0 people of color.
Wow.
0. And Arts and Education, there may be a few, but very limited. And we have a very diverse student population. Mm-hmm. And we've had some students say that they want to see more faculty and staff of color, in their classrooms. So that's something that I'm really aiming to do, and to push forward, is to make a more diverse faculty and staff at Piedmont University.
And I just think about your experience. You had that math teacher. Something sparked inside of you because you saw yourself in her.
Absolutely.
So I know you want to offer your students the same opportunity. And I don't care what anybody says. Representation does matter. It just does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny because when I started my doctorate program, there was not one single teacher of color, one single professor of color at Piedmont University that taught me. Dr. Brown was the only person of color in the School of Education, and she didn't teach in the EDD program. So I didn't have anyone to, relate to. Thankfully, I had some great support systems and mentors outside of that. But, going to that college every day and not seeing someone that looked like me, that's not very encouraging. So, it's so important for, children to have people that look like them, teaching them that they feel they can relate to.
I just think about, I do some mentoring with doc students at Georgia, and we don't have a very diverse staff. There were more Black professors when I was there, but most of them have gone on to do other things. And so when I come in to mentor some of the doc students, especially some of the Black ones, they really embrace the conversation that we have because I'm able to relate to them on a cultural level.
Yeah.
Some of our experiences have been the same. Some of the struggles that they're having initially in the program, I had in the program, just transitioning from maybe with your master's program or EDS to this full-fledged D1 doc program. The level of rigor is different. And so how do I navigate through this? The language that's being used, I'm not familiar with this. We're talking about most research and qual and quant and all these terms. And, what is your frame? And they're like, I don't know. Like my glass frame? What are you talking about? I don't have a frame. I don't have a theoretical frame. I don't have a conceptual frame.
Right.
It's like, let's just start at the beginning. Let's talk about the things that you may not know because you just don't have that experience. You haven't been exposed to it, right? And I just feel like when you have diverse cultures in universities or in public schools, one, somebody is going to see you and connect to you. And then for the ones that don't connect, you're going to give them a learning opportunity to learn something about a culture, a race, a sex, a gender that they have no connection to. And that's what you talk about when you say that richness.
Yes. Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
It's not just a field of daisies, it's a field of flowers. And the beauty of every flower, its own identity, brings this complexity to the environment that is so unique and magnificent. and every flower can still flourish.
Mm-hmm.
That was good. I just made that up.
That's pretty good. I'm impressed. You need to write that down.
A field of flower. Yeah, but I love it. And it's unfortunate that many places don't have it. And so we're really, really working to try to do that in all forms of education, even in the workplace. We're talking about DEI everywhere. But
everywhere.
Are we just talking?
That's right. That's right. That's right. And I wanted to make sure that it's not just talk, and it's going to take baby steps, of course, because not everyone is fully on board.
Yeah.
But I really think that if they were open enough to just to hear it and to understand what it can do to our organization, because I know we were having a conversation that our minority students oftentimes leave after the first couple of years. And what can we do to retain our minority students? Well, one thing is to have people on on your faculty that can relate to them, that they can relate to, that look like them. And they may think that that's one small thing, but no, that's not small to a little Black child, a little brown child. That's major. And if they could just understand that and embrace that, then that maybe that retention rate would begin to decrease. But
yeah. Here's the thing, and this is conversation. Now I'm just thinking, one, if I don't have many relationships with a person that's non-Black, that's not brown or Black, if I'm really experiencing a problem, I don't feel comfortable going and talking to my white professor.
That's right.
And
right.
What that creates unintentionally is an unsafe environment for those students. And that's why they leave.
Exactly. Just like you were saying, your students, your doc students, they don't know these terms, this term inequality, all those terms that they feel they should know and probably are not comfortable enough to ask their white professor, well, what does that mean exactly? Because they don't want to seem like they don't know, because nobody wants to see, when you're in this high level program,
right?
Some things maybe they feel they should know, but they feel comfortable enough to come to you and say, what the heck does this mean? What do they mean by this?
Right.
And not feel judged, because sometimes you have this imposter syndrome where you feel like, should I really be here? And if they're having these questions about just terminology that they can't go to their professor and ask, then they probably have that question of, should I really be in this program? And absolutely, yes, you should be there like everyone else should be there.
Yep, most definitely. So let's shift a little bit.
Sure.
Let's talk about more about you. And I want to know who has impacted you significantly in your career, or maybe in your life. Who has made the biggest impact on who Dr. Griffin is?
Yeah. That's a hard question. I can't say there is one person. As I said before, my early years, my mother and my sister have made a major impact. I still think my sister is the smartest person around. So that's just our secret, so don't tell her I said that. But she was a major influence. Miss Lang, my 7th grade math teacher. Then when I got to college, actually in each stint of my work, my middle grades work. So I had a major mentor at my first middle school, Kathy Davis. Second middle school, Sherry Bradford. My third middle school was Dr. Linda Clark. And she was probably the first education doctor that I had a close relationship with. I was already in my EDD program, but she just helped to kind of encourage me and shape me and, just help me continue to get through the program and to graduate. So just, made educators, African-American educators were very influential. My mother and my sister. Yeah, I've been very blessed when it comes to not a lot of people, but just some very strong women inside and outside of education.
And I will be sure not to send your sister this link, okay?
Sounds good.
What's the one thing you wish you would have known earlier in your career?
I wish I had known that that the playing field is not equal. It's not fair. You hate to use the word fair. It sounds so, elementary, but it's just not the same for everyone. And because I come from just a, happy-go-lucky kind of wide-eyed, bushy-tail, everyone can have the same opportunities if you, put forth the work. In my career, I've realized that that's not always the case. And it can just be because of privileges for some and not for others. Just recently, I was promoted to associate dean, but I have, trying to choose my words carefully, but I worked really hard for it, and think that I probably worked harder than most would have. But that's just, unfortunately, that's just the way the world is today.
Yeah.
But that's just, I wish I had known, or would have, maybe I would have approached things a little bit differently. But yeah.
And sometimes we don't know. It's very difficult because every place is different when we're trying to navigate through different circumstances and situations, just trying to reach that goal. It's difficult. It's hard. Sometimes it's tough, and sometimes you want to give up. And that's just the truth of the matter. But at the end of the day, you're here. You made it.
Yeah. And because of the strong support systems I have, no one would let me give up. So that's always great. So I think that's always good to know that having that support system, regardless of what stage of the career you're in, a support system is so important.
Yeah, they keep you accountable, help you be resilient. We're naturally resilient people anyway, but from all those strong Black women you just named, I can only imagine the amount of pressure. They're like, oh, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, you can cry, wipe your tears, and keep it moving. So
yeah. Tell me this: if there's somebody watching this, and they're listening to your path, your journey to where you currently are, and especially for teachers sometimes, because for those that love to teach, and I'm one of those people, they can be very reluctant to step out of the classroom to do something bigger, to have a greater impact. What advice would you give them that want to follow in your steps, want to move to higher ed, to do work, working with maybe teachers, or maybe even baby teachers who are coming through an undergraduate program to start teaching? What advice would you give them to say, hey, whatever it is that you desire to do, let's talk about it, and let's talk about what are those strategies to get there?
I think it's just important to stay the course. If this is if it's really what you want to do, you got to put the work in, and then just continue at it. I didn't know that I would be in this position. I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew that I had to give some things up in order to make it happen. And just believing, I had faith. I stepped out on faith, not knowing when the full-time position was going to come. I agreed to work several adjunct positions. I think I was doing 3 at a time at one point, just to kind of get my foot in the door and to get the experience. Because oftentimes that's the thing, they want you to have experience, but no one will give you the experience. So you have to just take, you have to take that experience wherever you can get it. So I took a leap of faith. I stepped out on faith and said, okay, after this school year, I'm resigning, because this is what I want to do full time. And even if it means doing 3 different adjunct positions to get the experience, to hopefully then move into a full-time position. So you just have to believe and be tenacious and work at your craft, and become the best, become the expert in your field, and become the best teacher that you can be, and just put yourself out there.
I think that's great advice, because I part of my scholarship when I was in grad school was with a program whose main goal was to increase the number of minority in academia. And We really, really, even to this day, we still push for it. Now, I am not currently in higher ed, but that is one of the goals of that organization. And I like what you said. It can be competitive at times, and they want people with experience. But if you don't have it, take what you can get. Start at the adjunct level, and just work your magic until whatever you really desire comes to fruition. And like you said, you worked 2 and 3 until you like you said, and you didn't know when the full-time position was coming open.
Right.
But when it did, you were ready.
Absolutely. Yep. Got to stay ready. They say if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready,
You
right?
come on, you don't have to get ready. That's what I'm doing. I love it. Yeah. And that is something even myself, I'm debating about, is the next thing for me higher ed? I'm thinking, how do I make the biggest impact? Mm-hmm. And am I settling right now for something and I could be doing even great work? And so you're speaking to the person you're looking at, because I'm asking myself that question. If I don't have the experience, is it even worth it? And you just told me, no, go get an adjunct position. Just start there. Absolutely. And then if you want to do more, you have that experience and then move on. So I'm taking that advice. I'm listening to you, and that was free of charge. So thank you so much.
No, I'm going to send you my bill. No, I'm joking.
COVID, I haven't been working, I don't. Right. Let me see what's left with my PPP, and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's talk about this. What would you say has been your biggest challenge, and what have you learned from it?
My biggest challenge, I guess my biggest challenge is just really believing that I belong. I sometimes can suffer from imposter syndrome, being in the room and then looking around and wondering, should I be here? I think that's something that I have to deal with occasionally. And just, knowing that I've put in the work, I've put in the time, I'm just as valuable and smart and worthy to be here. And so just reminding myself of that periodically, when things get a little hairy. I think that's maybe the biggest challenge at this point. It's just remembering who I am, why I'm there. I deserve it as much as anyone else. And, and showing them what I'm made of, and helping them to remember that I'm just as valuable. Because sometimes they try to, when you're one of the only or one of few, maybe dismiss you or take your ideas or your thoughts and use them as their own. So you just have to stand strong and stand your ground and make it be known that you're just as valuable.
So now let's flip it. So we talked about your biggest challenge. What is your biggest accomplishment?
I'm very proud of course, finishing my EDD degree, but I'm also proud of, as I was going through my 3 different jobs, I also had my own little tutoring company where I would tutor local, middle grades and high school students. And I had this one student who just struggled, wasn't interested in school for whatever reason. And, his mom, we worked really closely together. So I started working with him in 10th grade, 11th grade, and then he graduated, and now he's in the U.S. Air Force. So that is, I feel like that's a major accomplishment. We're still very close. I call him my nephew, and he and his mother and I are really close. And my other really, something that I'm really proud of is working with as a chair for an EDD student who was in the program, African-American male, who started off like gangbusters and then just dropped off the face of the earth. So I, worked hard on finding him, to get him back motivated and writing and getting him back into the program. And, his time was running out, you get that 7-year, so just working with him and, flying out to Arizona to work with him because he moved to Arizona and seeing him through and seeing him get hooded last December. That really, it's something that I'm very proud of, that he is now Dr. Ernest Dixon. So just, and I think, our African-American males have the toughest time, in my opinion, and just having had my hand in, helping shape too, I think something that I'm very proud of.
Yeah. And I'm sure he appreciates your commitment to him, and that he's going to make sure he pays that forward in the work that he does with other people. I always say it doesn't matter, when you spread goodness and good energy, it has no other way to go but outward.
That's it. Yeah.
It has to.
Just goes out.
Yeah. So now here you are, Associate Dean. Where do you see yourself going? What's your trajectory?
Well, if you'd asked me that in December, I would have said, I want to be the Associate Dean. So this is a very new role for me. So I'll continue to, to learn this role and to hone my skills in this area. But eventually I would like to write children's books. That is something that I've always wanted to do. And, I have one written. I just need to, kind of fine tune it a little bit and find an illustrator. But that's really, my long-term future is to write a series of children's books. And, who knows, maybe this dean of some college or university at some point. But right now I'm okay where I am and focusing on my children's book writing.
Awesome. I can't wait to read the first one. I'll make sure I get them for my, what age range are we thinking here?
I'm looking at like picture books for second, third, fourth, fifth grade, second, third grade, fourth grade. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, but I have a 5-year-old, so I'll make sure I pick up some in second grade. Yeah. She loves picture books. So I will definitely
she will love this
one.
She'll love, because the little girl is the hero in the story. So yeah.
Awesome. I love that. So that's a final question here. And I just want to ask you, number one, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a member of the Black Doctoral Network. It is people like you, your passion, your love, your expertise that we love making connections with. So let's talk about your affiliation with BDN. What are you looking for? I know you're a fairly new member. What are you looking forward to doing as a member in terms of relationships and all the other things that are afforded to people who are members of BDN?
Let me tell you, I am so excited to be a member of the BDN. I got your information from a colleague and I signed up, and just when I went to the website, I saw all of these great things that you guys are doing. I am so looking forward, and I signed up during the COVID, of course. So the conferences, unfortunately, I haven't had an opportunity to partake, but I am looking forward to the next one. And hopefully, maybe presenting at the conference. I would like to do that. But I just the opportunity to be surrounded by a group of like-minded people. We all have the same, and we just all want to make whatever field we're in a better field or better place for people. So that excites me. Just looking at some of the videos that you guys have done. And I mean, I just get chill bumps thinking about all of the goodness and all of the smart Black people that are out there, So I'm just so ecstatic to be a part of the network and look forward to just the future and whatever it has to offer.
Yeah, we're excited.
I'm so happy. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. This has been wonderful.
Not a problem at all. And if you are getting chills from watching videos, when you make it to your first face-to-face conference, it is one of the most overwhelming but awe-inspiring experiences ever. Black intelligence and excellence at its best. I promise you.
Oh, I can listen. You don't have to. I can imagine. I know it is. That's the exciting part.
Yeah, I'm looking forward, and I can't wait to come to your session when you present. So make sure you get that in, because I'm here. I am holding you accountable, right?
I know, right? It's on video too, so now I have to do it.
There you go. Well, Dr. Griffin, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being so honest and transparent about the things that you opened up with today. Would you please go and tell our viewers and our listeners where they can go to learn more about you and the work that you are doing?
Yes, so you can find me at Kim K. Griffin at Piedmont.edu. That's my email address. You can go on to our Piedmont website and find out about me there, or you can Google me or search me on LinkedIn. Kimberly M Griffin. EDD is how you can find me.
So listen, go and check her out. She is wonderful. I told you all in the introduction how great she was, so I didn't lie. The evidence is right here in the interview. So go follow her, check her out. If you need her, she just gave you her email. Thank you again, Dr. Griffin, for being here. And while you guys are going and following Dr. Griffin, go and follow us on all of our social media networks as well. We would love to connect with you. Now, again, this has been a great time. This has been a great moment sharing with Dr. Griffin Stewart. Thank you for watching the Black Doctor Talk podcast. We hope you will join us again next time. But for now, be sure to like, share, subscribe. And as I always say, go on and tell somebody. Go tell your mama, your daddy, your cousin, your pastor, and tell a friend that BDN is here and we're here for you. Until then, guys, be safe, be blessed. See you next time.